All right, I just finished playing the Evo build, and there was some good, and there was definitely some bad, and it was definitely an Evo build. So, yeah, let's get into it. All right, so I just got done playing, and before we get into it, I just want to say that, yes, this was definitely an Evo build. It had its issues, but the first thing I want to say is the expectations for this build was incredibly high, and CIG kind of set those expectations because they were saying a lot of the features were going to be in for 323, and that just really wasn't the case. Most of the FPS features were in, but most of the actual features and gameplay features that people I think were super excited for were not. So specifically, Master Modes was in, but is not ready for feedback. The default item action wheel thing is kind of in, didn't really work, not ready for feedback. Freight elevators, could not find them. I don't think they're in. Hauling missions were not on the Moby-Glass, and reputation-based hostility, it was so unstable, it was very difficult to find. So it was an Evo patch. It was unstable. But yeah, so before we get into the patch notes, guys, I want to share with you guys today's sponsor. Thank you to Holzkern for sponsoring today's video. Holzkern is an Austrian company founded in 2016 that started out making watches and then extended to things like jewelry, sunglasses, and more. What separates them from any other company is their use of natural materials like wood. Now, I love giving gifts to people, but it has to feel like it's coming from the right place. A simple gift card just doesn't feel personal. Everything from Holzkern is special and is bound to create a memory simply by being creative. I love their watches made with wood. They are just so different from anything I've seen, but at the same time can be worn with many different styles and for many different occasions. I truly feel like I have a one-of-a-kind product when I'm wearing them. One of the reasons I love partnering with Holzkern is that I've always had a more international audience, and they offer free express worldwide shipping from beautiful Vienna. And oh, if there's any customs fees, it's on them. Over 1 million customers have taken them up on that deal and have found that unique product for them. There are over 1,000 designs on their site, so head over to holzkern.com/SaltEMike and get 15% off at checkout using my code SaltEMike. Both of these are with a Y this time, so make sure you use the Y instead of an E, and always be proud to be unique. All right, and thank you for interacting with the sponsor spot. As always, make sure you check out Holzkern down in the description if you guys haven't yet. They've been a big supporter of the channel on Twitch and here on YouTube, and they've been super awesome. Their products are awesome. Now, with that said, let's get into it. The interaction system was the first thing, and I'll probably go line by line here in order of things that I checked out while I was, because I basically wrote down notes, so I'm not going to have, a teleprompter or anything. We're just going to kind of be looking at the screen and talking to you guys about what's going on, and probably share you some images on the screen from like CitizenCon about the things that we're talking about here. Interaction system was the first thing, and I actually thought it was really intuitive and really easy to use, and the craziest thing is you realize just how many interactable things there are in the game when you have this system on. There was F icons everywhere, and you may not like that, but it was very good because it knew exactly, like I'm looking at the cup on my desk, it knew that's what I was looking at, and that was the only thing that had an icon on. If there's a bunch of things close to each other, it does get a little screwy. The buying system I thought was quite good, but you can only buy things one at a time. And again, if you went to like a Kelto that has a bunch of items on a rack together, the screen would get into all sorts of weird places. It definitely has its issues as well, specifically on more legacy ships. I was using an Avenger Titan Warlock, and there was all sorts of problems trying to get into the seat, trying to get out of the seat. It was a mess. And then, yeah, I mentioned it earlier, the pie piss or whatever it's called, the default wheel. I could not get it to change the default modes, but again, this was one of those things that weren't ready for feedback. There are a ton of new keybinds, so the links of the notes will be listed in the description. I'm not going to go over them line by line, but they changed a ton of things. The reason I'm not going to go line by line, it's very likely that these are going to change again, so I don't see the value in sharing with you a change that's going to upset you when the reason why this is under NDA is because there's going to be a lot of things changing and fluid when it comes to stuff like this. So it may never get to you. Not really important. If you really care, check it out yourself. The new mobiGlas is here. I have a lot to say about this. Some of the apps look and may actually still be the Flash versions of the other ones, where some of them are new. I think the best thing is the home location. So when you press F1, big screen, bunch of widgets on the screen that are interactable actually in a certain way. So you could see your health, you could see your journal, you could see, I think, missions. I'm trying, like, off the top of my head, what are some other things that I saw? But I will say my favorite thing was, the notifications that pop up over your head, like commodity pricing alerts, things like that. Well, that is actually there in your journal, and you can go back to them, which is kind of cool. So you could see things that you might have missed. Like, what was that? Oh, which was kind of cool. New star map is in. Now, it is not an enjoyable experience at all. I'll say setting a quantum point was exactly the opposite of that. I think that was very satisfying visually, but at times, like, you can't scroll out. Interacting with it made me feel like Bone at CitizenCon, and maybe Bone wasn't just a boomer, right? Maybe this star map is not that intuitive to use, and it feels still a lot like the old star map, which is really disappointing. You can search for places. There are new things about it. I will say it is less holographic than it was shown at CitizenCon, which is very nice. And yeah, you could set a marker on that, which was pretty cool, but you can't really do much with them, and you can't remove them as far as we can tell. There are new missions, and this is probably the coolest thing and the most sneaky change that has come in. Kind of sneaky because some devs have been hinting at it. There are fetch quests in the game for you to kill creatures. Yes, that's right, creatures. And the missions do not accept when you try to accept them. So unfortunately, I don't have a marker directly to where those creatures are, but I was able to see a screenshot, and players were kind of telling us how to find these creatures. Basically, you would just go to Ghost Hollow, and they were there. For some people, I couldn't find them because I couldn't get to Ghost Hollow. I was one jump away, and then I got into one of those crashing loops I can never get out of. I never fully made it there. It was quite disappointing, but I did see a screenshot of a killed one in someone's hangar, which is really neat. And yeah, it was like, and it felt like an MMO, this quest, which was kind of cool. The minimap is kind of in. It's not in every location, the minimap at the top left of your screen. So it was nice to see. There was also new icons for party members, missions, your ships in a hangar. Literally everything has changed. Not all of it is for the better, but I think it's a preference thing of what you like versus what you don't. So we'll have to see what you guys think about that when you play it. Nav mode is a master modes thing that's obviously in with all the ships. Nav mode is how you fly faster, right? A few ships I was unable to get off the landing pad without going into nav mode. So normal SCM speed is not, I was unable to leave the pad with a cutlass, with a carrack, and something else, I think. But going into nav mode gave me enough power to be able to get off of the pad. I think that is incredibly unintuitive and would be horrible for a new player to experience. Also, when you go into nav mode, let's say examples of, I have quantum traveled from a city to the LEO station above it, and I want to fly to it and get to a hangar. Well, you would likely want to go in nav mode so you could fly a little bit faster, right? Yeah, there's quantum icons all over the screen, circles everywhere, your FPS goes down, all sorts of things. So nav mode is really an interesting thing when it comes to the PU versus squadron, where you probably wouldn't have these markers show up everywhere in a squadron mission, but if you press B, you're not just in nav mode, you're also turning on your quantum drive, and it's just like information or icon overload. It's crazy. I don't know how or what they're going to want to do to adjust that, but it definitely will need some adjustments. Item banks, they're in, but they're not in any of the cities like they showed in ISC. They're just at the LEO stations above the cities, or probably on some of the other stations, but I don't think anybody was able to get to them without crashing. But they weren't working, couldn't interact with them at all. The new and improved water that they mentioned in the patch notes actually looks really good if you're not too close to it. It doesn't have the interaction effects in the PU that we could see. Maybe they were like super delayed or something, but none of us can see them. When you got close, it didn't look very good. Like, didn't look super, super good. But if you got like a normal distance away, even just generally looked in third person from like 100 meters, 200 meters, it looked amazing. If there was light reflecting on it, it looked even better. So like screenshots, you guys on Reddit who like your screenshots, the water is incredible now for something like that. In Arena Commander, though, the water sim was in, and it looked okay, but we are still not at the levels of the CitizenCon demo at all. There is an option, this is also very exciting, to choose the engineering experimental mode in Arena Commander. Arena Commander was not turned on, so you could not enter these in a online environment, but the engineering experimental mode is an offline mode as well. So I jumped into that. I can give you some details on it, but not much because it is not working. So you have two choices of ships. This experimental mode is clearly a squadron battle type mode. We don't know if there's teams of any kind. Like, there's only two ships you can choose, the Gladius and the A2. So what we don't know is there an attacking side and a defending side? The A2 being the defender and the attacking side being the Gladius. Don't think so. It's probably going to be much more optional of what you want to choose because that's just how Arena Commander works right now when choosing ships. But I got into the A2. I got in the cockpit, got out of the seat, went to the screen that we saw at CitizenCon, didn't turn on. Then right to the right of that screen was a relay panel where you would put relays in. There were none inside. Didn't have any in my inventory, nothing like that. Didn't have any of them on my body that I can interact with. Nothing, right? I couldn't get out of the cockpit either. Couldn't interact with doors. The ship, I had no UIs anywhere. I had no MFDs. Nothing was working. So it is not in a place that is playable or ready for feedback, but it's there, and that's kind of cool. The biggest issue here was that the Evo test, like I mentioned earlier, did not have nearly any of the 323 features in it, but it had a lot of the FPS features, and a lot of them are ready for feedback. But the issue here is that the test was so unstable that there was no way to reliably test any of this feedback. The reason I knew I couldn't get off the pad with a Carrack is because I had a group of about 10 people, and we were trying to go down to a location and test out some of this FPS stuff since it was the major part of the patch. We could not get to a ground location without crashing. So it is impossible to tell you if the changes that they made were fun, good, give any feedback on it, because I couldn't play in Arena Commander with them, and I could not play in the PU with them. But I will talk to you about what was in the patch notes if you guys don't follow the game that closely, and share a little bit of information about what is going on. So the main point is that they just made a bunch of sweeping changes across the board for nearly every weapon. And the first major thing I noticed is that in attaching any optic to your weapon will slow down your ADS speed by 15% for small. So that is 1x to 3x, I believe. And then 4x up to 16x will reduce your ADS speed to 20% slower. Okay. And then under barrel laser pointers will decrease spread. And this is only when hip firing. And we'll touch on that in a second. Actually, I'll just tell you now. All spread is completely reduced when you are in aim down sight. So when you're looking down a sight, you have no spread coming out of the barrel. The bullets aren't going to go all wild. They are just going to act in the recoil pattern that has been created for that gun. Okay? So this is very RPG-like. So the sim people are going to lose their minds, I think, on this one. But they are making optics. Obviously, zooming in is useful, but there is a downside to it. The laser is now gaining usefulness because now you may not have to aim down sights as much. and it has a downside that you could see the laser, I guess, like coming around corners. But again, not very simmy and very more, I don't know, like RPG-like. So I don't know how people are going to feel. I respect the sim people's opinions, but personally, I hope you guys realize that for something like a laser to gain value to a player in the game, it has to give them some value, right? And this is them giving that value. So this is that video game kind of trade-off that I think we need to make. This is a good example of that. So for me personally, I do love this, but I'm also willing to wait and see. And having a laser without any of this, I thought was pretty good and I used them in Arena Commander. So yeah, we'll have to see on that. I will touch on some of the major changes to the weapons in the notes. But again, feel free to check them out because I'm kind of going to breeze over them here a little bit because this video is already really long and I don't want to take too much more of your time. And don't forget to comment if you think I skipped any important changes on this. Pistols. Nearly all of them seem improved. The Salvo and the LH86, I think, are probably the big winners here. And maybe the Coda comes in a close second. They simply just do more damage, but the Salvo will no longer knock players. It was such a toxic gun, so I'm glad they got rid of that. Rifles. These are guns that I am the least familiar with, so I'm looking for you in the comments on these. The P4 still looks pretty strong. It's getting more ammo. The Gallant might be a big winner here with a higher projectile speed, but again, let me know in the comments on this one because I don't know much about these. SMGs are the things I use the most. They were the go-tos for people in 322, I think. The C54, I think, is going to absolutely slap because it is powerful now, and its spread is reduced greatly, and if you put a laser on this, you don't even have to aim down sights. Plus, it gets a magazine size that's 10 rounds larger from 40 to 50. The Lumen will also fire faster, do more damage, and has its spread reduced by 90%. So this thing's going to slap as well. And the Custodian, I think it got nerfed pretty bad. Love that thing. I'm going to miss it. Rest in peace, Custodian. And then for LMGs, Demiku, it might be a winner here. They're getting an increase in damage, but it'll have like more smooth recoil, I think. The F55 was really strong in CQC, or CQB, I should say. But group fights, like that was where it was really strong, and it just got stronger from these notes. The spread change is something that will have to be tested because it depends on how bad the spread is, right? And then the FS9 continues to be nerfed to death with the spread getting worse on this as well. Shotguns all seem buffed because they were the most useless, right? So now they have damage increase, and some of them have more pellets and things like that. Snipers will now have bullet drop. I was unable to notice this in the test, unfortunately. The zeroing on scopes I saw is the thing that is most important to point out. It was pretty bad. Here's what I could choose. I can choose 0 meters, 500 meters, or 1,000 meters. The games that have zeroing that I've played are Tarkov and DayZ. You usually went up by about 100 meters, but you didn't have the range on the scope automatically for you there. So I think that needs to be removed. The auto being removed is a good thing, but also the automatic range finder on a scope could probably be removed as well and maybe have a different item for that. I don't really know. And then, yeah, most of the weapons damage was increased because there's a lot of debuffs happening to snipers because of their CQB abilities were way too high. And then the glint. I will say it is quite strong from what I've seen if the sniper is looking directly at you. But again, I think especially on a dark background, but again, I'll let it play out in like a jump town situation, and we need to just see how it is in the game before we hate on it too much. And then special weapons, grenade launcher, railgun, and missile launcher. I think they all got damage buffs by increasing the radius in which they do damage and increasing the amount of damage they're doing. So we'll see. These might end up being OP again, specifically the grenade launcher. A little worried about that. But that'll do it. So as always, thank you guys for watching. And yeah, make sure you guys check out our sponsor, Holzkern. I don't normally put sponsors on videos like these, but yeah, so I hope you guys really enjoy it. We really love Holzkern here in this community. They've been super awesome. So with that, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. And yeah, we'll catch you in the next one, I guess.